Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Today, inshallah, I'm going to have a very important discussion about some verses which come at the end of the 14th juz, which is basically the end of Surah Al-Nahl, in which the Prophet ﷺ is addressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is told, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al-hasana." Call onto the way of your Lord with wisdom and with good speech. So inshallah, I'm going to be talking about that, and also the subsequent verses which come after that, which are very important because they were revealed in Medina, whereas the whole of this surah is revealed in Mecca. This verse, or these verses, basically will be addressing a lot of issues that Islamophobes bring up, and they accuse Islam of being radical, being barbaric, and so on. So people who are in the field of Dawah, they should listen to this talk and this discussion, and inshallah, I hope that it will benefit everyone. So the first ayah that I want to talk about is Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal maw'izati al-hasana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to the Prophet ﷺ and says, call unto the way of your Lord with hikmah. First and foremost, what is hikmah? Hikmah means, literally translated, it means wisdom. And the first and foremost interpretation of that would be that a person, he speaks with knowledge. So a person should not be giving da'wah without having the relevant knowledge related to that da'wah. Many people, they quote the hadith, "Ballighu anni walaw ayah." Propagate from me even if it's one ayah. Yes, that is true, but the ayah that you're propagating and the hadith that you're propagating, you have to have the relevant and the correct knowledge about that hadith before you propagate it, before you talk about it, before you teach it. Okay, so if you don't really know the background of the hadith or the ayah or the Islamic chapter that you want to discuss, you really need to stop. As the saying goes, stay in your lane and don't venture into unknown territory. Unfortunately, what happens is when it comes to Islam, everyone thinks they're a scholar. Everyone thinks that they know what there is to know, and they basically just want to give fatwas and rulings and so on without having the correct knowledge about giving those rulings. So the first and foremost meaning of hikmah is knowledge. The other meaning is, if you take it literally, it means wisdom. And the most important aspect of wisdom when we give da'wah is to realize who it is that we are giving da'wah to. You cannot just give the same da'wah and the same invitation and the same talk to every single person. When you talk to a Christian, the talk has to be different and you address it from different ways. If you talk to a Jewish person, it has to be addressed in a different way. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he addresses Jews and Christians in the Quran, he specifically addresses them with the wording, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, O people of the book. So the things that were relevant to the people of the book, to the Jews and the Christians, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed them. So we learn from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's methodology that you do not invite people, different people, using the same message. So you would not talk to an atheist the same way that you would talk to a Christian. You would not talk to a polytheist, a mushrik, just like you would be talking to a monotheist. Okay, so All of these different aspects of giving dawah have to be learned and have to be practiced. So know who your audience is. This is first and foremost. You need to tailor your talk and your teaching and your lecture based upon the audience that you're going to be facing. That's the first thing. Secondly, I've touched upon the issue of knowledge. Some people are more knowledgeable in talking to Christians. Some people are more knowledgeable in talking to polytheists. Some people are more knowledgeable in dealing with atheists. For example, Hamza Sources, he's very knowledgeable in dealing with atheists and people that don't believe in God, na'udhu billah. So if you are not experienced in a certain aspect of giving dawah, call in a person who is more experienced, who knows what he's talking about, and he can give dawah according to that. The third aspect of hikmah is that in addition to the knowledge itself, the person that you choose to represent Islam in any particular venue, he has to be appropriate for that venue. For example, if you have a group of, for example, African Americans coming in, it might be appropriate to have an African American Muslim address them because he is from the same background. And if, for example, there is a group of Caucasian Americans coming in, maybe it might be appropriate to have a white person, white Muslim, addressing them. And I'm very hesitant to use this terminology because there's no racism in Islam, but we are talking about the wisdom of giving dawah in an appropriate way and using or putting people forth that are more appropriate for the audience. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said in one verse of the Quran, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. That whenever we sent a prophet, it was always with the tongue of the people that he was being sent to, so that he could explain things to them. So the tongue, it means obviously the language, but in addition to that, the other cultural nuances that exist within diverse societies, they also have to be understood and they also have to be implemented so that the dawah can be effective. So, and this is the racial aspect of it, the diversity aspect of it, but also, for example, if you are addressing a group of doctors, it might be appropriate to have a doctor addressing them who is from the same medical background so that they will immediately have a rapport with him. If the group of people that are being addressed are a young group of people, college students for example, it might be appropriate to have a college student address them. So hikmah and wisdom entails that the person who's talking, he also should be in tune with the people that are being addressed and also should have a fundamental and foundational rapport with them even before the talk and the dawah begins. And there are different stories that we could refer to prove this point. I'm not going to go into that right now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal maw'izatil hasana." And the second aspect is al maw'izatul hasana. What does al maw'izatul hasana mean? Firstly, it means that our speech should always be gentle. We should never be harsh in our speech. And the biggest proof of that is when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was being sent to Fir'aun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to him and Harun alayhi salam, who were both given the responsibility of inviting Pharaoh, قُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. Now who was Pharaoh? Pharaoh was the person who claimed to be God. أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, he used to say. He used to make people worship him. He butchered thousands and thousands of children when he was told by his fortune tellers that the children that are going to be born in a certain month or certain year, one of them is going to overturn your throne and he's going to destroy you. So he had thousands of children butchered who were born in one particular year. So this is the Fir'aun about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Musa alayhi salam and Harun, قُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Tell him and speak to him in a gentle tone, لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. Maybe he might take heed or have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when that's the case with Fir'aun, the biggest tyrant, then obviously everyone else is way lesser than him in evil, even though they may be in disbelief and kufr, but not to the level of kufr as Fir'aun was. So we should always be gentle in our speech. And also related to that, we should never insult their beliefs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Do not curse those people that call other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it could also mean do not curse the gods that these people call unto. Otherwise, what they're going to do, they're going to retort and they're going to come back with insulting your God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَيَسُبُّ اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. So we are instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not be insulting. By way of example, let me just tell you that we as Muslims don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. But if you were to point blank tell a person, a Christian person, that I don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that might come across as an insult, okay? Because this is part of their fundamental beliefs, that He's the Son of God. You can get that point across by working your way up to it. For example, telling the person that Jesus is mentioned so many places in the Quran, His miracles are mentioned, and His virgin birth is mentioned. His mother is held in high esteem in the Quran, so much so that a whole chapter is dedicated to her, and she is the only woman mentioned by name in the Quran. So we hold Jesus in very high reverence and with very high respect. But the only thing is that we don't believe in His divinity and Him being in the Son of God. So this method of working our way up to making our point, it works much better than if we point blank hit them with, hey, we don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So this is an example of how you can be effective but also not insulting. The third thing is very important too, and this is the issue of the way that we deal with non-Muslims when they come to the mosque. Sometimes people are really unaware of the religious rulings relating to dress and so on. So a woman might not be appropriately dressed when she comes to the mosque. And there could be a variety of other things that could happen that people are unaware of when they come to the mosque. A person might walk into the musalla with his shoes on, simply because he's unaware of the ruling. But if we were to blow up on these people and start shouting at them and tell them, get out of the mosque, this is not what you're supposed to be doing, is that person going to come back ever again? No, he's going to be either ashamed or insulted, and it's highly unlikely that he's going to come back to the mosque again. Remember the dua of the Prophet ﷺ at the Battle of Uhud, when his face was injured and he was bleeding and he was wiping the blood from his face and he was making dua for his people. The dua was, Allahumma ghfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh Allah, forgive my people because they do not know. Because they do not know. So, not knowing, even the Prophet ﷺ made this excuse of not knowing for the mushrikeen that were trying to kill him in cold blood. They were trying to assassinate him. They wanted an end to him. But the Prophet ﷺ is making dua for them and giving them an excuse that they don't know. So when non-Muslims are coming to the mosque, they do not know what the rules are. So we need to give them the benefit of the doubt and just be a little bit tolerant and be polite. And if we get an opportunity to tell that lady who came in with the inappropriate dress, say that we have a dress code in the mosque, and next time you come, you're more than welcome to come again, but it would be better if you dress in X, Y, and Z way, so that people or the Muslims would feel comfortable and the house of worship is respected. So again, not being insulting, but getting that point across. The classic example of the Prophet ﷺ being tolerant and just keeping in consideration the lack of knowledge of a person is the very famous story of that Bedouin who came into the mosque and he proceeded to urinate in the corner of the mosque. The Prophet ﷺ instructed the Sahaba, who were ready and willing to beat this person up, that stop, be patient. And when he finished, he called him over and said that this is the house of Allah and the house of Allah should be respected, and this is not what we do in the house of Allah. And he simply instructed the Sahaba to get a bucket of water and pour it over the urine so that the effect of the urine could be dissipated. So this is a classic example, and you might be surprised that in my career as an imam, this happened in the masjid that I was working in, where a completely drunk person came into the masjid, went into the wudu place, and he urinated in the same place where people make wudu, thinking that that was the urinals, thinking that that is where people are supposed to urinate, and he urinated. So again, the same thing happened. Muslims were upset and willing to throw this person out, but again, we dealt with it in a wise and diplomatic way, understanding that he was drunk, he didn't know what he was doing, and just sent him on his way. So these things can happen, so we need to be very, very careful how we deal with it, so that the door of dawah remains open for these people to come back again. And finally, I'd just like to say about this issue, which is extremely, extremely important, taking care of the new Muslims, the converts or reverts, whichever word you want to use for them. And that is that once they become Muslims, we need to partner them up with Muslim families who mentor them, and they become their go-to people if they're in need and so on. In Ramadan especially, we talk about it a lot, that the most lonely time for the new Muslims is the time of Ramadan, when they're breaking the fast by themselves and making suhoor by themselves. It is a very lonely time. Usually these people have been disowned by their families because of the fact that they accepted Islam, and they're relying on the Muslim family to help them out and be there for them. So we need to make sure that they're taken care of and they are respected. They are welcomed. I've heard so many incidents, and this boggles the mind as to how we can allow this to happen in our masajid, where born Muslims, they say to new Muslims that no, you're not really a Muslim. You're not, because you weren't born a Muslim, you're not a real Muslim. I've heard that being reported and being told that this is what people say. And the same thing applies to these new Muslims. We need to be gentle with them and gradually introduce them to the teachings of Islam, where the sisters might not be willing to or able to wear hijab immediately and dress Islamically immediately. So that might be done incrementally and over time when they are mentally ready to do so. They may not be able to pray their 5 times daily prayers immediately, but that again, they need to be gradually taught how to do that and to make it part of their lives. They may not be willing to fast the first month of Ramadan because it's just so overwhelming. So we need to overlook their faults and try to coax them into maybe doing a half a day or 3/4 of a day, and slowly and gradually build them up to doing the full fasting of Ramadan. So taking care of the Muslims is the responsibility of the Muslim community. And we say this all the time, that many Muslims, they take the Shahada and they become Muslim, and everybody does takbir and hugs them and so on. And then after that, nobody knows where they are. Nobody took their number. Nobody took their information. You never see them in the masjid, and nobody follows up. And for all we know, the next week or the next month or the next year, because of the lack of support and the lack of follow-up, they may have even left Islam. So on whose shoulders lies that responsibility but ours as Muslims? So these are all related to Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana. Call unto the way of your Lord with wisdom and with good speech. Wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. And dispute with them or fight with them in a way which is the best. Now some scholars, they make tafsir of this part of the verse that when you are giving dawah to people and they become argumentative and they give you a hard time, the meaning of jadilhum billati hiya ahsan, dispute with them in the best way, is a'rid anhum. Lamma adak, when they are giving you a hard time, then you should not dispute with them and just turn away from them, ignore their insults. This is the what is meant by jadilhum billati hiya ahsan. That when it comes to disputing, it should be done politely and it should be done in a nice way, in a way that you don't push that person further away from Islam. It should be done with a mutual respect. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about certain things that took place. And this was specifically after the Battle of Uhud. وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. And there's a background to this verse. It's very important to understand this. And the background is that during the Battle of Uhud, Hamza radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the beloved uncle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was killed. And not only was he killed, but his body was mercilessly mutilated to the point that his ears and nose was chopped off and his liver was removed from his body. So when the Muslims saw this, they said that next time we have a battle or we have a fight against these mushrikeen, then we're going to make sure that we're going to mutilate their bodies too. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse to tell them that no, this is not what we Muslims do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. If you are going to punish them or avenge them, then do it in a way that you have been punished or you have been fought. So the same way that they're fighting against you, you will fight back against them. وَلَئِن صَبَرْتُمْ لَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلصَّابِرِينَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلصَّابِرِينَ. And it's even better to have sabr and be patient. That you take, for example, prisoners of war, you take them into captivity. The ideal or the natural inclination would be that let's kill them because they killed our fellow brothers and sisters. But وَلَئِن صَبَرْتُمْ لَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلصَّابِرِينَ. If you are to have sabr, this is best for the people that they do that. After hearing this revelation, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Bal nasbir, we're going to have sabr. We're not going to mutilate the bodies of the people that we fight. Rather, we will show the best face of Islam, and we will not do what people do against us. And at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah ma'al ladhina taqaw wal ladhina hum muhsinun. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the people of taqwa, the people who have the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those that do ihsan. Ihsan in this context means to do things which are above and beyond just merely justice, to bestow favor upon people. When people are favorable against others, even favorable against their enemies, we will find that it will become a means of them becoming Muslim. So this was a very important talk relating to Dawah and how to deal with the non-Muslims. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enables us to take this lesson to heart and put it into practice, because it is extremely important so that our dawah is effective, and so that people are learn the truth about Islam, people are influenced by the true message of Islam and the purity of Islam, and also those people that become Muslims, they stay in Islam, stay in the fold of Islam. All of these points, inshallah, should be taken into consideration. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq to understand and practice what has been said and heard. Jazakumullahu khairan.